All right, I think we're gonna get going here. I'm Justin Brennan. Hopefully you guys can see my screen. Zach, can you see my screen?
Yes, I can.
Okay, welcome to another ICTM webinar. This is DeltaMath, tools to help with distance learning. I tried to combine a couple nights of useful things to help us as we adventure into this distance learning, remote learning, e-learning, whatever we're continuing to call it. I think it's been different things I've heard in the last couple weeks. I'm Justin Brennan. I'm one of the 912 directors at ICTM. ICTM plays an important role in providing professional learning and professional development using things like these webinars. But if you're interested in giving a webinar, please email us at webinar@ictm.org. You heard some of this stuff last night. I apologize, but anyway, this week should have been NCTM annual, but obviously with the coronavirus, we didn't have that. But we are going to have our ICTM annual conference October 17th at Joliet Junior College, and we're currently accepting proposals to present. Those proposals are, the due date is April 15th, and you can also find that on ICTM's website. So there you go right there. I always forget to do that slide. So anyway, you can, proposals are due on the 15th for Joliet Junior College in October. Whitebook is one of our sponsors for ICTM, and they sponsor these webinars. So we are going to give away a free Whitebook flip chart, a $59.99 value. It's got 10 sheets of Whitebook paper, Whitebook sheets. One side is blank, one side has a graph grid. They're easily you can hang them in your room, you can use them for professional development, lots of uses. At the end of the webinar, I'll have you guys put in the chat because you need to be present during the webinar live to receive it. And if you don't win it, you can still type in the coupon code 40ICTM when you purchase it from their website. So that's a great value, good deal there. And I've been using them right now for my homeschooling with my kids. Now I got like 3 white books put up on the wall. So anyway, we're going to move on. Zach Korzyk is the creator of DeltaMath, and he is a high school math teacher for 13 years in New York City. He began creating DeltaMath 10 years ago as a teacher and continues teaching until last month when the site had reached 2 million annual student users. He lives with his wife and 2-year-old son in Brooklyn. So with that, I am going to move things and let Zach take over here. All right. Zach, you should be good to share. I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
Yep.
You should be good.
Okay.
If you got a question, by the way, you can throw it into the chat, and we'll try to stop Zach at good times to ask him some questions. So feel free to do that. I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you. And can you see my screen?
Yep.
And me? Good. All right, everybody. I am Zach Korzyk, and I'm going to show you DeltaMath. And hopefully you already have an account. DeltaMath is a free website. As Justin said, I started it 10 years ago, and it's been free, and every aspect of it has been free until last month when I did leave my teaching job. So I did introduce a thing called DeltaMath Plus, which has a yearly fee of $50 per teacher for 12 months. So I am going to show mainly the free features, but I might show here and there what are the extra things that are part of DeltaMath Plus. I mainly made the website just for myself as a teacher, the kinds of things that I knew that I wanted my students to do to basically practice and get immediate feedback. So if you create a free teacher account on DeltaMath.com, which I'm guessing many of you already have, when you sign in, you see this page. Now, this page is an entire page of all of the different problem types that DeltaMath has to offer. And they are color-coded, where middle school is this light blue. The A for algebra is Algebra 1. G is for geometry. Algebra 2, you can see, is a lot of things. I taught Algebra 2 for 10 years, so I fully developed every little piece of that curriculum there. The PC, the red, is pre-calc, and then this C is for calculus, mainly focusing on AP calculus, AB only at this point. So really, the first thing you want to do is say, what am I teaching this week? And is that on DeltaMath? So if you're trying to do, polynomials, you can type polynomial, and everything from all the years, which are color-coded, will show up. Now, you might also, this is a category that has the word polynomial in it. And these are also the skills that have the word polynomial in it. If you want to expand that category, you can actually click that box and it shows you everything else in that category that might not have the word polynomial. So for example, box method, you might want to do box method level 2 guided. It doesn't have the word polynomial in it. Now, if you click it, what it's going to show you is an example of a box method question, and you could keep pressing new problem forever, and you're going to constantly get a new problem. So how this works is that I create a program for this problem, and my program generates 100 problems of this type. So there's 100 problems in the database. And if you were to assign this, all of your students would get different problems, so they can't really copy off of each other. And they can also keep trying as many examples as they need until they can show that they've developed mastery. So I could show you this just as an interesting one. If we use the box method, there's 4 terms in this, and there's 2 terms here. So if the student would select that, they could have done it the other way. They can actually literally just drag the terms there into the left-hand side, and then drag the terms here onto the top. And then they have to fill out every box. And this is what I call a guided problem. If it says guided, it basically means it's kind of for teaching purposes, whereas the students might get it wrong, and it would give them feedback along the way. So here, I think I messed up on that one. If they press try, they get an error message, and any term that was correct, it's gonna like lock into place, and any term that isn't correct is still editable until they figure that out. Now, each thing has a full solution. So every time the students actually have a show example button, and it would show them what the solution for that example is and how they could have solved it and how they could have combined like terms. So really, there's over 1,300 different problem types on DeltaMath of all the varying things. And each of those types, you should think, is 100 problems that exist in there. So there is a lot of problems. So I could show just a few of the other things that I find interesting. I think the first thing is just showing like there are some really cool interactive things that the students can be doing. And that kind of shows the value of DeltaMath. Now here, the common factor of 6 and 15 is 3. So if we do the common factor, it's going to break it into groups of 3s and kind of melt them together. And we could see that 6 out of 15 is in fact the same fraction in simplest form as 2 shaded pieces out of a total of 5. And then they would submit that, and they get a check mark if they get that correct. I have another example with combining like terms. So you can, again, just press new problem all the time. There's an infinite new problems for the teacher. The teacher can press new problem over and over. The student is going to get a specific problem, and they're going to have to solve that before they get another problem. And I'll explain how to make an assignment. So this is actually guided because they can combine like terms. They can kind of drag. If they try to drag 2 terms that aren't like terms, they get feedback. If they drag 2 terms that are like terms, they can try to type the answer there, and then it kind of just combines them, and they just have to repeat that process. So I think this is a cool one. I spent about, 7 months developing proofs here. So there's actually a system where the students can write proofs where they can say, okay, side AC is congruent to AC, and there's a whole list of potential reasons for side congruence. So if you teach geometry, the picture constantly updates, and then we can prove that 2 triangles are congruent, can we? I think I might be missing something here. But anyway, you could go through the proof, and the student could prove it in any valid way that they want. And if they try to say something that is not valid, like here using SSA or something, they will get feedback, and that won't go in. So the students have, freedom to do it however they want. And again, there are, examples, and there's basically, I inputted like 350 manually proofs here so that there is really an unlimited amount that the students can try, and they're broken into various levels. So this would be level 1, and I actually did create a level 0 for that. And here's another one, which is kind of having kids play around with the amplitude and the midline of a trig function, and they can play with the coefficients to see how it matches until it reaches the dotted graph. So we have to increase the frequency. And then once that matches, they get, oh, okay, press and show example. They got the check mark, so it's correct. So I just wanted to show you a few of the ones that I think I'm pretty proud of. Those are them. But there's also some standard things, like if you just say equations, you have 1-step equations. So if you click that, 1-step equations, which would just be essentially adding or subtracting from both sides. As a teacher, you can just see over and over what they are. You can also click this little question mark to see what's the accuracy rate on DeltaMath for this kind of problem? So 3.6 million attempts and 3 million successes. Roughly speaking, it takes the average student 50 seconds to solve that problem. And there's also 100 problems, so you can statistically see this one was the hardest problem. Apparently, this one was the hardest problem. So the first thing that you're going to need to do once you create your DeltaMath account is, of course, search for which problems you want to assign. The student is not going to see this giant page of problems. You have to make a curated assignment for them of what you want them to work on. So I'm going to show you how to make a simple assignment, and you would go to Create Edit and Create Standard Assignment. Now, test correction is a little more advanced feature, and you can read about that by pressing this question mark menu and then help videos. I go through that, but I don't think I'm going to have time in this session to go through test corrections. So really, you should always click that first thing, which is Create Standard Assignment.
Hey,
so
Zach,
I'm going to call it, yes.
One thing before you create your assignment, I know how to do this, but I think some people that are maybe new to DeltaMath, how does the student get online to DeltaMath?
Yeah, so I was going to explain that because
okay.
You should create an assignment before your students register, because I'll show you now.
Okay, all right. I'm sorry, Zach. No, sounds great. Yep.
No problem. Yeah, so if your students, as a teacher, I'll go through it. You will be emailed the teacher code, and if you go to Tools, Login Information, you can see your teacher code right here. So this one was 321321. Your teacher code is going to be a random 6-digit number. So your students will make an account, and they will select their class from a drop-down menu. So you can, when you created your teacher account, you should name your classes like period 1, 2, 5, 7, 8, or you can call them class algebra 1, geometry if you want to. And if you go to Tools, Manage Students and Classes, you can add periods and change the name of those sections, whatever you want to call them. And you would see your current roster of students right here, those who have signed up already. So at first, you'll only see the kids who signed up. So make sure everyone signs up, and then they will be here. Now, I created a section called Test. And for section Test, I haven't made any assignments yet. So if I had a student who created an assignment and they said they were in section Test, if they log into DeltaMath, they're going to see your teacher has not created any assignments. So it is your responsibility to create the assignment before they sign up so that they have something to work on. So I am back here. We did Create, Edit, then Create Standard Assignment. So I'm going to call it Test Assignment 1. You need to say for which sections this applies, because you might want to make one assignment for an Algebra 1 class, but not for your geometry class. So I'm just going to say that this applies to section Test, but you can select all sections for which this assignment should apply. So if you have 3 periods, which are Algebra 1, select all 3 periods. Now we're going to say Post Assignment Immediately, which means they'll be able to see it right away. You could say a specific time if you don't want them to be able to see it before some specific time, but I'm just going to say immediately. So that's all you have to do on this first tab, Overview. The second tab is where you add the types of skills that you want your students to work on. So I'm just going to make one of a few one-step equations because it's pretty straightforward, and we can solve them quickly in our examples. So the most important number here is the required. The required is the number of problems that the student will have to get correct. It is not the number of problems that they will see. Now, on the free version of DeltaMath, the one that's existed forever, the student can keep working until they get that required correct. But there is such a thing as a penalty. So if you set penalty to no penalty, then they'll get 100 problems. They'll get as many problems as they need. If as soon as they get 5 correct, they are done with this section, and then they will move on to the next section. So that's what no penalty means. But if we do the default penalty, which I recommend, because this is the penalty that would be there for a new teacher account, this is how it works. If they're required to get 5 correct, if they get 3 right, 1, 2, 3, then they have 3 out of 5. But if they get 1 wrong, the next one wrong, their penalty is 1 off, which means their score will go from 3 down to 2, which means they'll have to get 3 more right in order to reach their 5. So in the process, they will have gotten 6 questions right in order to reach the required score of 5. And it's just a way to basically differentiate so that students who are making a lot of mistakes are going to have to keep practicing longer, until they can at least get maybe more than half of them right. Because if they're doing right, wrong, right, wrong, right, wrong, right, wrong, their score will go 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, and they'll never make progress up to 5. Now, you can make the penalty harsher, which is 2 off. So if they were at 3 and got 1 wrong, they would go down to 1. The harshest is back to 0, which means even if they got 4 right and got 1 wrong, they go back to 0, which requires them to essentially get 5 in a row correct. But they can keep trying forever, over and over, until they get 5 in a row correct. That all DeltaMath used to be back to 0 when I first invented it like 10 years ago. Then I decided that was a little harsh, and I do 1 off. You could also do 0.25 off, which would mean for every 1 wrong, they only lose 1/4 of a point. Essentially, every 4 wrong sets their score down 1 and forces them to score an extra 1 right. The only downside to no penalty is that students would sometimes just submit a blank answer on a problem to search for an easy one. So if you want to teach them like, hey, check your work, it's important that you not make mistakes, then you do penalty of 1 off. So I've assigned 5 of each. So I'm just going to leave it at that, and I'll go through other settings in a minute. Once you go to due date, you need to say when it's due. So let me have it due tonight at 10 o'clock p.m. And I'll explain late date in a minute. So all you have to do is name the assignment, select the periods, say what you want your students to work on, and then in the due date, say when is it due? And then you create assignment, and there it is. So now if you're my test student and they press refresh on their page or they sign in, they're now going to see the assignment that you made. So this is the student page. It has all of their assignments on the same page. So if they press the one-step equations, they're going to get a little feedback here. They're going to show how to use the calculator. This is how you make multiple answers. This is how you make fewer answers, including no solution. But most of the problems are just one answer. So if they write S, okay, the answer is 7. So if they write 7, they're going to get a check mark, and their score is going to go to 1, and their assignment grade is at 5%. Let's think about why that makes sense for a second. If I actually go back, the assignment is obviously out of 100%. There are 4 sections. Each section is worth the same amount by default. So they're each going to be worth 25% of the assignment score. I do want to point out, even if you assigned 10 of these, then each section would still be worth 25%. We can change the weighting of each section, but it's not weighted based on number of problems. It's weighted based on the sections. So 4 sections means each section is 25% of the grade. And since I've accomplished 20% of this section, my overall grade is only at 5%. So what happens? Okay, first of all, students have a show example button, so they can press show example. They can press next example, next example, next example. They can press this. There are 100 problems that they might be able to solve, but there are also 25 built-in examples. So they can do this for a while, get as many examples as they would need. Press original problem. Now, let's say we get this wrong. So let's say we say that this is -4. So what's going to happen by default, you see that down there, is the default is they actually get 2 attempts on that same problem. So if it's wrong, they're going to get a notification that their answer is not correct. You have 1 attempt remaining. And I'm going to show you how to change that if you want to, but that's the default. So let's say they actually got it right now, which is -10. Then they're going to have a score of 2. So their overall assignment grade is 10%. Now, there's a couple things I want to say. If they write here A equals 0, they're only supposed to write the answer, but I do give them feedback that says this is not expecting an equation. Please just type in the algebraic or numerical expression which represents the answer. So they need to learn that for equations, I don't want them to write variable equals. Now, I do want to show you what happens if they get it wrong. So let's say they wrote 18 for their first attempt, and that was wrong. Now, for their second attempt, let's say they write -18. So I want you to see what's happening here. I told you since the penalty is 1 off, that their score is going to go down by 1 when they get 1 wrong. So notice their score is 2, and my grade is still 10%. I'm now going to get this question wrong on my second attempt. So what happens is we see an X. The student can see their feedback, what they should have done. But I do want you to notice that only the score goes down. The score goes down to 2. But I didn't want their assignment grade to go down because then students would be afraid to continue. So their assignment grade is based on their record, and their record is the highest that the score has ever been. Now, this is kind of a different system. Probably, I don't know if any other online system has this. It's a little bit, it takes some students time to figure out how this works, because the students might complain, hey, I'm going to get this one right. So if I add -1 to both sides, what's going to happen? I'm going to get this right. My score is going to go back up to 2, but my record's not going to change. So my score is 2, but my record didn't change. They're going to say, I got it right, but my assignment grade didn't go up. Well, that's because their record is still 2. It's only if they get that next one right will their score and record go up again. So they will ultimately have to get 6 questions correct. Now, you might have seen this little watch help video thing. That is part of DeltaMath Plus. I think the biggest thing that I undertook is creating these 1,300 videos, a video for each problem. So this is just a video going through solving one-step equations, all different kinds with the negative on this side. I analyzed all the different problems with which ones were easy, which ones were hard, went through conceptually, how to solve this by using inverse operations. So as of now, if you have DeltaMath Plus, the students just have this option. You don't have to assign it or do anything. It's just there for them. So actually, let me watch it a little bit so that you can see a record. Equations, type 1. Let's turn that down. All right, so I'm just going to watch 6 seconds of the video and then hide it. All right, so let's go back to the teacher and see what we would see from that student. So if you have a name of an assignment, you can write it there. Actually, it might not be loaded in because I just made it. But if I were to refresh, it would be there. But if I go to view assignments, I see test assignment 1. So these are all of my assignments that I've created for all of my classes. And don't worry, these are fake names. I made a program to jumble up all the names. So if these are links. So if you click them, it is a link. And you will see every student in that section. And there's only one student in my section test. So there's nothing else to see. That's all you see. Now, at the bottom, you see the grand total of all the video plays and the grand total of time for that assignment. Now, you're seeing so far what their record is in each one. So this student had only gotten 3 out of 5 here and nothing else here. So you're seeing what they haven't done. On top, you see the average of the whole class, but there's only one student for each section. Now, the difference between grade and complete is if any part of that grade was done late, then the completion can go, you can complete the assignment even if it's late, but the grade will not be 100% if it is done late. So I do want to show that there's other things you can look at. These are also links. So for example, if I click this, then you would imagine seeing a whole page of students, but I just want to show you what you would see of what we just did. You can hover here and see how long they spent looking at that problem. You can hover there and if it was right or wrong. And you can also see if they watched that built-in help video, if they have DeltaMath Plus. Now, you can also kind of edit their record if you click that. So that's a thing that you can do. You can also click that check, and you would see their problem, and you would see their first and potential second attempt. If I go to the right, then you can see the X. Their first and their second attempt were both wrong. Therefore, this was still an X. So I do want to show you maybe some of the data for a more substantial assignment. This was based on my AP Calc kids, which I'm, still helping them out, making videos even after I left last month. So you can see more substantially here. I had 63 video plays. We can see all the students. So if I click on a column, you can sort by it. So I can sort by complete. So I can see the students who have not yet completed the assignment. And I can see that this student has a 70% grade, but a 91% completion. Well, that's because they must have done some part of the assignment late. Now, I did give them 50% late credit, and I'll show you how to do that in a second. But if you, for some reason, want to forgive their lateness, you can click that grade, and forgive lateness will bring their grade equal to what their completion percentage is, because they truly did complete 91% of the assignment. So if we actually click into here, we can see a whole lot of data, which students are watching videos, the trajectory of wrongs, rights, which can be interesting data. You can see how long they're spending essentially on that. So I want to, let's see, okay, the other thing you can do for a particular student is click on them. You can either click on them here, and that's a link, and it will show you all the assignments that that student has solved. You can also kind of search for their name up here. So if you see a student's name, you can click it, and it will bring you to this page. So some of the things you can do here is just see a given student, what they're doing, if they've gotten, if they've completed all their assignments. These are called quiz corrections, or test corrections, which I said I wouldn't be able to go through. But if the student kind of did the quiz correction, they can increase their test grade. If you press this expand or each individual plus, you can see the details for that student and what they solved. So this is nice. And you can also give a student, this is the DeltaMath Plus feature, an extension. If they, whatever reason, you can extend it however many days, press save, and then that student will be able to get full credit even after the due date. So I wanted to go over some more of the settings from that test 1 assignment. So let's talk about late dates. So let me actually just make this due at 9:30, which is in a couple minutes, and then add a late date, which is tonight at 9:45. Let's say 9:45. Okay, so I'm going to give them PM. I'm going to give them 50% late credit. So if I give them 50% late credit, then that means any work that they do after the due date is not going to be given full credit. So at this point, if I press refresh, the student is going to see that it is still an upcoming assignment. And if they were to solve a question right, they would be able to get full credit probably. So I think they're still getting full credit on that. I don't know if we've touched 9:30. Now, if they refresh their page and it's after 9:30, they're going to see that that assignment is in a different category of lateness. So let me actually just go back to it so I can add some other things. So on the skills tab, one of the DeltaMath Plus features is actually video, which means that you can assign a YouTube video. So if you go to YouTube and you have a video that you made or that somebody else made, you can, let me pause that. You can copy the 11 characters after the V equals, and you can put that into the YouTube video ID, and you can call it whatever you want. You can call it one-step equation video. Now, the default weight is 0, which means that watching it or not watching it will not affect their assignment grade. But if you want it to be worth the same as all the other ones, like I said, okay, so if you press more in here, you can see that the weight is 1. All of them have a weight of 1 by default. So you could change that to 1.1 or 1.05. You could change it to a whole number. You could change it to 0 if you don't want it to count as part of the assignment, if you want it to be optional. But essentially, every section is weighted relative to the others. So if this one is weighted 1 and the other one is weighted 2, then that one will be worth twice as much as a section. So maybe if you have this one being twice as many problems, you might want to weight it times 2 so that in fact it's proportional to the number of problems that are there. Other options you see is the attempts. We can set the attempts to 1 if you want the student just to have 1 attempt and then get that X right away and have the penalty kick in right away. That's up to you. I like 2 because it gives them a chance to make a mistake and then just search and learn from their mistake, but it doesn't let them be too sloppy because they only have 2 attempts. But you could set that to 200 and essentially the student would have infinite attempts on that problem in order to get it right. And the only way they could get it wrong and get a new problem is if they just gave up on the problem, which is an option. Okay, so I'm sure this will be late now. So if I press refresh, we're seeing that this is now late, but it's in the late credit available. So remember that each one that I got right was essentially worth 5% of my assignment grade. So this question is 5. I'm going to get it right. But now the student has 2 grades. They have a completion grade and a grade. So the grade is lower because they were late. So of that 5% complete that they just earned, 2.5% was added to their grade, and then that just rounded it to 23. So I just wanted to explain that that's how late credit works. Now, feel free to anytime edit the assignment. So let me just edit this and make this back to 10 o'clock, and I'll make this at some later time. So anytime you need to edit an assignment, you'll just go to Create Edit, and then Edit, and then select the assignment, and then you can edit the due date. You can add a late date. You could add additional late dates. You could say, okay, but if it's not done by next April, then you're only getting 25% credit till that. As long as the dates are chronologically in order, and the credit should decrease as time goes on. If you don't really want to penalize kids for late, then I would just put 99%. Therefore, a student's grade can go up almost to 100, even if they do it late, but they would still see a due date there. I know some teachers are asking that for students who have difficult circumstances. So the video will show up. So let me actually press complete that edit. And if I press refresh now, then the student will see a video, and they'll see that video with the YouTube ID that you put on there. Now, once they press pause or once the video ends, you'll see that that % of video will show there. But I think I set it to be weighted. I can't remember if I set it to be weighted at 0 or weighted at 1. So actually, I think that the grade did go up to 19. Oh, actually, let's see. So if I press end, oh, it was adding. So we can see that my 29%, it's adding to the assignment grade. So that was part of it. Now, as a teacher, if you view assignments, so that's student data, view assignments, and then click it here, you can actually see now as a column the video and the % of the video that the student watched. And you would see for every student what % that they did watch. And that, but you're only able to see that, unfortunately, at this time for videos that you add with that YouTube link that I showed. So that's only if you, in the skills, press video and then add your own video. The videos for me, I'm trying to work out a system where you can assign them in a similar fashion, but that does not yet exist. So that's my warning. Okay, so some of the other features which might help with like distance learning, I suppose, are you could with DeltaMath Plus, let's say you wanted, let's make a new assignment. So assignment 2, you can assign that to test. Let's say you wanted to assign system of equations or something like that, but you only wanted to assign specific kinds where it didn't have to subtract, where it only added together. I don't know. So in that case, you could find ones that you liked and then press assign this problem. So what that does is it actually goes into the skills and it assigns that single problem. So you can actually edit the name now. You can call it problem 1, and the student will see whatever you name it. Then you can go back in there and kind of search for another problem you like. So you could make kind of a, I call it like a playlist of problems, and you can assign them. And then it would only be one problem each, and each student would get that exact same problem. So if a student got it wrong, they wouldn't be able to get an infinite number of problems like the other normal DeltaMath has. So in a sense, their assignment grade would just be the percentage of those that they got right. Now, if you want, but everybody would have the same problem, so that the students might communicate and cheat that way. You could always click, let me just name this problem 2. You could always click see problem to remember which one you assigned, but you could also just keep going and press assign this problem as many times as you want, and all the problems you assigned would be there on that list. If you're actually giving a quiz, I might better recommend just pressing plus, pressing 1 problem required or 2, whatever. But with the DeltaMath Plus, you can assign it to max problem equal to required. So let me actually say I wanted 1 of those and I wanted 2 of those. And in each case, I don't want them to get an infinite number of problems. And in each case, I don't want to show example maybe. So I can set show example to off. So let's still set this. We'll just set this till tomorrow. Now, what's the student going to see? How is this different? A normal DeltaMath assignment, they keep going forever, up, down, up, down, up, down, until their score reaches 5. Every student can reach 100. It might take some students more time or less time, but every student can reach 100 if they persevere. I love that. That was my original intention of DeltaMath, mainly as a learning tool. But a lot of teachers were asking for tests, and I do plan on developing like a much more impressive testing system where you can select like problem types or difficulty levels or various things. But for now, in each of these problems, remember, this was 0 out of 1. It was a specific problem, but everyone will get that specific problem. Now, we still gave them 2 attempts here. So if they do get it wrong, I'll just show you what happens. If they get it wrong twice, they're going to get an X. They'll see the solution. But when they press next problem, it's just saying, that's it. That's the only problem. And on the assignment, it's going to say done, and it's a 0. Whereas if I weighted these all as 1, each section is worth 25%. So at this point, it's done. The student cannot get higher than a 75%. So in each of these first cases, it was a specific problem that I assigned and all have the same. But in this case, even if you assign 2 problems, this one I didn't assign this problem. I assigned the section, and I just limited it to 2 problems. So in this case, the student would actually get a new problem, a random problem again. But down here, it will say they're on problem 2 out of max 2. So if they read about it here, if they're used to normal DeltaMath where the problems keep coming, make sure you explain, hey, this is a test or something, and you won't get an infinite problems. So make sure you try your best on those. And in this case, only after they do actually 2 problems would it say you're done with that section. So this student is obviously not going to do so well, and those sections are done no matter how many times they click it. So if you do happen to want to give a student, a break on that, I forgot what that student's name was, but if we click the name there and we're on this page, which shows all of her data, you can go and for, this one, I wouldn't do it because it's just one problem. It's just going to give them that same problem. But for this, if you want to say, okay, you can do 2 additional problems, then you can give them an extra 2 problems. So that is basically all of the DeltaMath Plus features. I explained mainly the regular assignments. I guess there's one more thing I could talk about, which is when you're editing an assignment, let's go to back to assignment 1. You might want to have, considering these are all different types, you might want to add one mixed problem and call it mixed equations. And by default, it says finished. When you add sections, they are now added to the mix. So what's going to happen is the students will see this as one section, but it's going to show them a random one of these. So then, therefore, students will have to distinguish, do I divide or do I add? Unlike here, where they're going to get the same problem every time. So if you want maybe to make them do, I've done this for a lot of assignments, 5, 5, 5, or maybe 3, 3, 3. And then for the mix, make them do a few extra because this is the real practice where things are mixed up. And if you want to be nice, you could set the penalty to 0.5. Now, this is the relative frequency, and these have to be whole numbers. So if you set that to a 2, that means that this type will occur twice as often as the other types. So in this case, I've edited that. The student is now going to see mixed equations out of 10. Now, we don't know if we're going to get type 1, 2, or 3. So it looks like we got type 1 that first time because it's just adding. This one is dividing, so we have type 2. But there are other types here. You have dividing, but it's not a whole number, so you have to write your answer as a fraction. So there's various situations. I think this one is, dividing, but you have to simplify it. So they're going to say, oh, wait, I forgot to simplify, so I got to do 1/4. So in this case, the students are getting more variety in there, and that's totally up to you. I tried to keep things in different types as much as possible so that the teacher would have the discretion to assign them and just make them master the adding over and over, or whether to create a mixed problem. There's other things such as timed problems, which I think I can just talk about in a few, just very short period of time here. So let me actually edit that same one. So a lot of people want to assign the timed, and the timed ones are the ones that have the clocks next to them. So the very first section says mental math. So there's something like simple operations. If you click it, you can see what's going on. It's just basically raising things to the 0, dividing by themselves, whether something's undefined, whether something's -1, whether something is itself. So this is the kind of thing where I would kind of want to make the timer in such a way that they couldn't use a calculator. So I think the student could be, so let me actually add that to the assignment. By the way, you can remove things from the assignment like this. And you can also reorder them. So maybe you want this in the top, so you put that on the top. So I might say I want students to be able to do 10 of these, but within 30 seconds. So they're going to have 3 seconds each. So they might not have enough, time to use a calculator, but the only way they're going to get credit is if they can do all 10 problems in a row in less than 30 seconds. So the student can see, how's my grade calculated? 30 seconds, 100%. Now, if they get one wrong, what's going to happen? It's going to stop them. It's going to kind of show a small explanation. So unlike the regular non-timed problems, you're not going to be able to see a problem log of all of these. In fact, you're only going to see if a student did it. If they get 10 in a row, you will see them if it took them more than 30 seconds. It will record this took them 47 seconds. And that's why they didn't get credit. But they're going to have to keep going until they can get 10 in a row in less than 30 seconds, in which time their time grade will be 100. And you will be able to see that again, of course, in the data as usual. You just click the assignment name here, or you can search for the assignment here. So if I say assignment 8, I can click that and assignment 8's details come up. You can also click this, which is an edit, or here to hover to see when it's due. There's other things like you can filter by section. So if you have one section in the room, you might do that. AP Calc section 7 would be this, and you can sort there. Other things as far as data are problem logs. So the problem logs, just all the logs ever in order, and you could search by name or problem type or assignment name. So if I just say test assignment 1 there and click it, I'll only see all problems from test assignment 1. I don't find this as useful as going through the pages the other way that I showed you.
Hey, Zach.
Yeah.
So one question that came a little bit earlier, are students able to progress monitor through their own work in progress? And I was thinking about this screen because I brought screenshots and stuff like this into like IEP meetings and different things with kids, just searching by, through the problem logs. But
I would
maybe you have
go
a better way.
here. I would go here to the student's name. I think the student can go to tools and then history, but it shows them their history and it shows them the videos and everything. It was too hard for me to actually make it go to the problem. It's just confusing. So the students can go to tools and see their own history. So that would be maybe one way that they could see like how they're doing, what % correct. This is ever this term. So it's not like on a specific assignment. And I don't really value this too much, because if a student is making a lot of mistakes, but learning from them and eventually reaching with the penalty, like their 5 that they need, I think that that student did a great job and they persevered. So they should get credit for that. Yeah. And then the last thing I think I should show is student last action. If you do that, it shows you the last time a given student had solved the problem. So I can actually see I have, a lot of problems. A lot of students had done something recently. So let's say you're in a class, maybe all the students are supposed to be working for a given hour. You can press refresh and you can see all the students who've solved anything in the last 10 minutes. If you see someone all the way down here, like an hour ago, and you know that they're not doing their work, so you can kind of like call that student out. Now, usually if you click a student, their email is showing here. I just hid all of the emails for privacy reasons. And you can also click that button to sign in as them to actually see which problem they're on. If you sign in as them and then click the section, you'll see the problem they're on. Otherwise, the only way you can see the problems is the problems they've solved already by clicking those checks and X's on any of the pages that have that. So you can also see a sample student page by clicking that and then clicking which section you want to see a sample student page for. You can, I get this question a lot. You can copy assignments. So you can copy assignments from yourself. So if you click a test assignment 1, you might change it and make it for a different section. Or let's say you have kids broken into 2 groups and you want to make this group have fewer problems, but mainly the same stuff. You can copy an assignment that way. You can also copy an assignment and search for a teacher code like 555123 is mine. And anybody can search for my assignments and copy them. You might search for your colleagues' assignments, but you'd have to, in order to be shareable, you have to select that you are willing to share your assignments with anyone with my teacher code. As soon as you click that, then if someone types your teacher code here, they'll see the assignments you made and they'll be able to copy them. Therefore, maybe as a department, you all have the same assignments. One person has to make them. Because I do think that the hardest part for everybody is going to be kind of this intimidating thing where it might not be called what you think it's called. We have the search bar and I recommend that, but you might not be able to find what you want and it might be there. So you might have to do a lot of searching. So if somebody else searched and figured it out already, you could share that assignment. And I am always adding new stuff now that I'm full-time with DeltaMath. I can add more stuff, and the more people who sign up for DeltaMath Plus is more people I can bring on board to help me maybe answer emails or various other things that I might not need to do, so I can focus on adding more content that teachers request. And speaking of, you can request anything you want here by skill request, and you could say, I want this, and that happens all the time, and I read every single one of them, and I incorporate that into what it is and I need to prioritize for the teachers who are using the site. So I think I have covered the basics. I can open it up for questions, or I don't know, Justin, what you think I should do?
Yeah, we've addressed some of the questions people have had, except one person asked about deleting old classes, so like closing terms and stuff like that. Why don't you talk about that real quick?
Yeah, excellent. If you already have a class from last year or first semester, you should go to Tools and then View/Close Terms. And if you had a past term already, then you could view them here. So all the data that this is essentially archiving your current sections. They would be here and you could view them and you could look at the student data from back then, but I don't have any I don't have any. So probably what you want to do is close terms and release students. Close terms and release students is, it's going to basically, if your roster is changing, if it's the end of the year, and if you, maybe some teachers have kind of a mess where they have some sections from last year and some sections from this year. So all of the sections will be archived by default, and I could call that 2019 to 2020, whatever you want to call it. If you click this, and I'm not going to do that because all my classes will archive, then all of them, you'll have a fresh slate completely. All of the assignments will be gone, archived, and all the students will be archived. And if they have you again, they'll have to re-add you. Now, by the way, a student can re-add you by signing into their already existing account, going to Tools, Manage Login, and then Add Teacher. They can add a new teacher code, and they can actually select any number of classes that they're in with you, and then they add you that way. So once they have an account, they're going to have to sign into their already existing account. So that's a question I get a lot. So if you wanted to keep, hey, I want to keep tests because that's this year, that will stay. But if you have the same students and you just want to get rid of the assignments and have a clean slate, then you just select close term. And in that case, you might say, you know what, these two assignments were still in this term. I want to archive all of those, and I will see the data, but only if I come back here to this tools close term and then click view term there. So that will kind of give you a fresh slate.
Awesome. One other thing, just I didn't see, well, I got one other question, but one thing that comes up, I know a lot on Twitter, is what if you have a team teacher or something like that? Can you guys share an account? And I know what the answer is, but I know some people may be interested.
Yeah. I get that question a lot. So yes, that is something I need to add. And unfortunately, there's a ridiculous amount of laws now that I have to follow, and I'm signing these privacy contracts that say I have to encrypt data in a certain way. So it's actually incredibly more difficult now that I have to encrypt data with this, like, you know, national security agency things. So right now, only the teacher in themselves, one teacher account has access to the data. To grant to another teacher would make me have to re-encrypt it also another way. Essentially, it's complicated, and I need to spend a long time to add that feature. So I can't just add it in the next week. So unfortunately, it's not available now. So I would just recommend you would have to just change your password. You can change your password in Tools, Login, Change Password, and then just share that password with your co-teacher and then log in. I would just recommend that not both teachers edit assignments, because if you edit an assignment and you add a skill, they won't see that you did that until they refresh their page or sign in again. It won't automatically update them if their browser is still open. So then if they edit it, they might undo what you did. So you will have to share a password, unfortunately, at this time.
A couple other questions here, sorry. Are there any problems dealing with conic sections?
But that's another one I get all the time. There's 1,300 problem types, and I've kept busy over the last 10 years, but as a full-time teacher, I've added what I could. Conic sections, it's in my mind. My goal is really, I mean, high school is like, there's so few things that are missing that I get the same requests over and over. So in order to alleviate those requests, I think I should make some conic sections soon, but they're not done yet.
Gotcha. I have one person asked that at a previous conference, they logged in as a student during the presentation, and they're stuck with the student account. Can they change to a teacher account?
Yeah, you can log into your student account, go to Tools, Manage Login, edit yourself, and then change your email to like something old. You can just change your email to anything, and it's effectively deleted. That means that takes that email out of the reserved emails that can't be created. I prefer that than you emailing me to delete the account. So this is essentially deleting it. It's just changing the email to free it up so you can make a teacher account.
All right, so hopefully that helps you, Ben. Any other questions? Type them in the chat window. We got Zach for a few more minutes. It's just a great program, and honestly, students don't like homework in general, but I have found that when I switched over to this, most of my students actually do like it. They like the immediate feedback. It gives better feedback than I could give. So my students are generally happy with it. They're going to complain about any kind of homework you give, but at least if you give them, it works in some good growth mindset because, you can control what you're taking off and how you set up. You have total flexibility. So that part I really like. And the kids do seem to have some favorable opinions on it.
Can I add one thing?
Yeah.
Okay. So, right. It's some students really hate it because their old pattern was just trying and giving 100 for effort or copying from a friend, and neither of those is possible. But if you basically, if you're clear, like this is what you have to know, and if you make your tests kind of related to the assignment they're doing, they're going to learn a lot, because the only way they can complete their DeltaMath is if they actually have learned it and mastered it. And then if they start seeing their tests go way up, they will see the value. So I always have as a policy that I have my assignment DeltaMath due like the day of the quiz. So I might only have an assignment once a week, but then it's due, they do it, and then they come in the quiz and they nail it, and then they really see the value. And it's really, even if homework is only 15%, tests are 70%, they're going to see I need to do the DeltaMath for my test grade.
Definitely. A couple other questions in here in the chat window. One is, could you add problems in geometry that have students determine if triangles are acute, obtuse, right, or not a triangle?
Not a triangle. Oh, based on the sides? Based on 3 sides or something?
That's just all I have in there, but do you maybe just want that person to be maybe...
You can put in a request. I guess I would wonder if you give 3 sides, maybe to use like the law of cosines or something.
Maybe they don't actually form a triangle, maybe they can't.
I have not formed a triangle, and I have forms a right triangle as multiple choice questions already in the geometry section. Yeah.
Gotcha. Are there, sorry, I just totally blew up my menu here. Are there properties of special parallelogram somewhere?
There's so much more I could add. Like I took so long on the proofs, that there's so much in there in quadrilaterals, by the way. Like I haven't even shown them, but like I have like just reordering the steps of this proof so that it would be correct. So a lot of those would, I think, develop the properties, but there are a lot of things in geometry that are low-hanging fruit, and I just need to stay organized and figure out how do I make that, easy, medium, and hard level to really, help the students learn it at a rigorous way. Yeah.
Nice.
So there might be some stuff missing there.
One of our guests said, one of their students said to tell Mr. DeltaMath, that's what you're called, how awesome,
here too.
Yeah, that's awesome. How awesome he is for developing such a cool program and platform that isn't a program run by a publishing company. So,
all right, you're welcome.
Yeah, it's some good stuff. I think that's all we got right now. So could you give our friends maybe something, what's next on the horizon for DeltaMath and DeltaMath Plus?
Well, yeah. So obviously I want to develop all the content there's, like a little bit of pre-calc, a little bit of algebra, and geometry a little bit more substantially, and then a bunch of middle school stuff. So the content development is huge. And then in the plus features, the things that I said were coming out, this is almost probably ready. Whereas if you see a certain type of problem that has like three types in there, maybe like quadratic formula with imaginary solutions or irrational, you would be able to like unselect a certain kind, like imaginary, or only select problems from here, which are the easiest third statistically. So I'm going to give you more options when you're assigning. I want you to be able to write your own problems, and they would be self-graded. It might be more difficult to write all the solutions or the graphs, but if you just write an equation, I kind of have a system already. It's just not ready, where the teacher can add their own problems and they'd be self-graded. And then the testing system, which I kind of explained earlier, it's going to be more substantial. The ability to make individual assignments for students is super common request, so I'm definitely going to implement that. I want to allow teachers to create graphs, and like mine, because I think they look nice. So if you want to like customize a graph, I think that would be a really cool tool. So these are some of the features that I'm going to add to the system that are beside, and more, we'll just keep that a secret. I do have some ideas, but I'm not sharing them yet.
Okay.
You know,
Okay.
the problems themselves are huge because if I don't have what you're teaching, then you can't use it at all. But these are the features that can be used regardless of which topics you teach.
Well, that is awesome, Zach. Well, we're going to respect your time here. I haven't seen any more questions in the chat window, but you can always go to Twitter at Mr. DeltaMath, and Zach is super responsive to Twitter. I just love it. Twitter went down. Not Twitter went down. DeltaMath just briefly had. We were just talking at the very beginning. Just briefly had a little issue last week, and Zach answered within like 2 or 3 minutes that something was kind of up. It was back running online. It's been a very stable program through my use. There's been very little times that it's been down. So if you're just kind of worried about a product where you're like, I'm just iffy if it's going to work all the time, it's got a really good track record, or at least from my kids. Like, my kids probably wish it went down more. So that part's been really good. So if you're worried about that, it's been very solid. So, all right, I'm going to take the screen back here, Zach.
Go for it.
Give me 1 second. And in the, it's not letting me, okay. I think I got it now. In the chat window, we're going to do our giveaway for our white book. So type in the word white book in the chat window if you are interested in running for our free drawing. We would like to thank Zach for a great presentation on DeltaMath and DeltaMath Plus. I really, really appreciate on short notice, Zach, that you did this for us and supported us as we're looking for some new e-learning, remote learning solutions. So thank you very much, Zach.
Sure.
I'm going to hang out for just a few more minutes, but Zach, you are all done. We really appreciate your time, and we'll talk to you again, buddy.
Okay, bye.
Bye, Zach. I'll stay online for just a little bit more to make sure you guys are good. And, I guess maybe we're done.
I pressed stop share.
Okay. Oh, no, we're good. No, we're good. Sorry. We're still recording here. So I'm going to turn off the recording, but the chat window's open if you guys need to do it. So recording is now off.